Hello, everybody. I hope that you guys are doing well. I hope that everybody's safe, given this global pandemic that's going on right now. Um, I'm praying that everything gets better soon, so that we can go back to living our normal lives that we are all used to. Anyways, I'm going to do my presentation for you guys today. Bear with me. This was the best that I can do given the current COVID-19 crisis. Um, My presentation that I am going to present to you revolves around a case that I found very interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed reading about it, and I hope that you guys find it interesting too. My case revolves around a mad bomber, a criminal psychiatrist, and criminal profiling all together. Now, before I jump into my case, I am going to read a quote for you guys that I read on the introduction when I was reading the source that was posted by Dr. Duntley on Blackboard. It says, the famous American jurist, Judge David C. Bazelon, who is an expert in mental health law, he stated the following: challenging an expert and questioning his expertise is the lifeblood of our legal system. It is the only way a judge or jury can decide whom to trust. And I couldn't agree with that more. I think that is very true. Anyways, jumping into my case, as far as criminal profiling goes, it dates back to 1956 to the case of George Metesky, the mad bomber, and the pioneering work of criminal psychiatrist Dr. James A. Russell. Now, George Metesky, he was a bomber that terrorized New York City and its residents in the 1940s and 1950s for a total of 16 years. A little backstory of George Metesky. He used to work at a electric company, and there was a little accident there where after the accident it changed his life completely for the worst. It gave him a permanent medical condition, and he was not compensated in any way, shape, or form from his employer. But I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about that at the end. George Metesky, the mad bomber, he planted his first bomb outside of New York City's electric company, Consolidated Edison, on November 16th, 1940, in front of the headquarters. It was wrapped in a note that said, Con Edison crooks, this is for you. Now, this speculated law enforcement agencies and other police officers and detectives that he intentionally did not want the bomb to detonate, or else nobody would be able to read the note. So luckily the first bomb did not detonate. 10 months later, he planted a second bomb in New York City in the September of 1941. This time it was an alarm clock, but luckily that bomb also was not detonated. It did not go off. This continued on for a while. However, he decided to stop making bombs from the time period of 1946 to 1950. He wrote to the public, the media, that because of his patriotic views of America, he will not be making any bombs from that time period. However, he will later bring Con Edison to justice. They will pay their dastardly deeds. Signed, the mysterious FP. Then, on March 29, 1950, a third bomb was found unexploded in New York City's Grand Central Station. However, it did not explode. The first bomb that did explode was the fourth bomb on April 24th, 1950, and this went off in a phone booth near one of the public libraries in New York City. It did not kill anybody. However, it did a lot of property damage to the nearby library. From there on, he planted bombs in movie theaters. He planted bombs in telephone booths. He planted bombs in concerts. He planted bombs in movie theaters, cinemas, you name it. He would also write to the public that these bombs are so that he can make the Consolidated Edison Electric Company pay for their dastardly deeds. By Christmas of 1950, he had planted or mailed at least 8 bombs in New York City. He also wrote to the public through the Herald Tribune editor. He wrote to them, I am sorry if you are worried, but I will make Con Edison sorry. I will bring Con Edison to justice. He later also wrote to another American journal known as the Journal American, and he complained that the police would not print out his letters. He actually wanted the police to print out his letters, and he actually threatened more bombings if the media and if the police did not take him seriously, and if they did not understand that he is of great importance. From there on, the bombings continued on until 1956. In the year 1956, December of 1956, another one of PF's, the secret identity PF, his bomb went off in the Paramount Theater in Brooklyn. It injured 6 people among 15,000. After that, the police said, enough is enough. We got to catch this guy. The reason being they didn't go public with this full throttle was because they were scared of fake bomb threats, bomb hoax, and copycat attacks. So that was the primary reason they didn't take him so seriously before, but this was the straw. By this point, he had injured over a dozen people. However, luckily he did not kill anybody. Police made a special unit just to find this guy, and they even offered a $25,000 reward for anybody that would give information about the mystery bomber, the Mad Bomber. However, they also went to a criminal psychiatrist by the name of Dr. James Russell. He was a former chief psychiatrist during World War II and the Korean War. And they explained the situation to him. He then hypothesized and created the term criminal profiling. Now, Brussels, he hypothesized that the bomber was a stocky man in 40 to 50 year age range, who was paranoid, unmarried, living in Connecticut alone, or perhaps with an older female relative, and probably an immigrant from Central or Eastern Europe. He then urged the police officers and the detectives to publish his image in hopes to drawing out the Mad Bomber. The psychiatrist, Dr. Brussels, he knew that if they published the hypothesized portrait of him, imaginary portrait, then the Mad Bomber would respond. And as soon as they published it, the Mad Bomber, he did respond. He responded right away and demanded that they take off the postings. However, they did not. The psychiatrist did not. Um, it was then also that the detectives and the police, they contacted Consolidated Edison and they told him to look through the files for somebody that may have worked there and might had left the company on bad terms. So Consolidated Edison, they went through the compensation records of 1931. Now, they knew to do this because when Metesky wrote the letters to law enforcement agencies and the press, he wrote multiple times. He wrote over 12 dozen letters that he worked at Consolidated Edison and that in September 5 of 1931, there was an injury, he suffered from an injury, there was an accident, and he was not compensated at all. And that he wanted to bring the company to justice because of that, because they wouldn't pay up. So they knew that if they looked through 1931 records, they would find somebody. And lo and behold, they found a gentleman by the name of George Metesky, who filed workers' compensation and who also made a statement that on September 5th, 1931, he was injured and he did not receive any compensation. So then, using that information, the police were able to track down Metesky and they went to his house. And when they went to his house, they unsurprisingly, or surprisingly, I should say, they found a 44-year-old unmarried son of Lithuanian immigrants living with two older sisters. Now, the psychiatrist also hypothesized that the Mad Bomber would be wearing a double-breasted suit. And when the police officers went into the house initially, Metesky was not dressed in a suit. He asked the police officers if he can get changed. And they allowed him, and once again, lo and behold, he wore a double-breasted suit, just like how the psychiatrist had hypothesized. Metesky was arrested, and he faced 47 charges and 7 counts of attempted murder. And he was also deemed psychologically insane, and therefore he did not get a trial. They weren't able to try him because he just didn't have that mindset, and so therefore they placed him. He was confined to Marawatan State Hospital, New York Psychiatric Treatment Center for the Criminally Insane. Excuse me. He never got to stand trial, as I mentioned, so therefore he served 16 years and 8 months before getting released from a maximum of 25-year sentence. He was released in 1973, where he returned to Connecticut and lived another 21 years in freedom until his death at age 90. Now, the question here is, how was it that Dr. Brussels, the psychiatrist, was able to hypothesize so accurately exactly how and what the Mad Bomber would look like and how his lifestyle was? Well, I'm going to share that with you. Brussels hypothesized that the bomber was a stocky man in 40 to 50 age range who was paranoid, unmarried, living in Connecticut alone or perhaps with an older female relative, and probably an immigrant from Central or Eastern Europe. The hunch about gender was derived from the observation that historically most bombers have been men. That makes sense. The diagnosis of paranoia was supported by the feeling of persecution in the bomber's many letters. The guess about the age was based on the diagnosis, since it was believed that paranoid disorders typically start in the early 30s, and it was known that this perpetrator had started his reign of terror for 16 years. This is according to the source that was posted on Blackboard by Professor Duntley. Brussels' speculation to the bomber's material status flowed from his knowledge that paranoids tend to be socially isolated loners. His assertion regarding the bomber's physique relied on a then recent study that mental illness and body type that found that 85% of paranoid individuals were stocky. As far as how did he know that the man was of Eastern European descent? Well, in Eastern Europe, most of the men that did the terrorism, they were done through bombs. They planted bombs, they melt bombs. So that was a good hunch that this guy's from Eastern Europe. And how did he know that he lived in Connecticut? Because many of the immigrants that come from Eastern and Central Europe, a lot of them, they settled down in Connecticut. As far as the double-breasted suit goes, the psychiatrist knew that he was a bomber that was intelligent. He was smart, and he wanted to look good because he had that sense of power. And so he knew that he was going to dress in the I guess you can say the most high-end clothing that you can wear at that time. And another thing that gave way to finding the bomber, as far as Dr. Brussels helping law enforcement agencies, was that in the letters, psychiatrist Brussels, he observed that out of the 25 out of the 26 alphabets, George Metesky, he wrote them flawlessly. It was perfect, except for the W. The W was a little off. The W was more like a woman's breast. And he speculated that perhaps Metesky did not leave the Oedipal stage of love from his mother. Now, according to Freudian psychology by the Sigmund Freud, the great Sigmund Freud, the Oedipal stage is when a boy is sexually attracted to his mother through the ages of 3 and 5. So that was just a speculation. Whether that is true or not, we don't know. Even Dr. Brussels, the psychiatrist at the time, he did not know. So let me show you guys a picture of the perpetrator. I want you guys to see him. And I'm getting that set up now. Before I show you guys the picture of him, I want to tell you that I want to give you a little backstory. When the accident happened on September 5, 1931, what happened was one of the boilers exploded. This knocked him down to the ground. And he was unconscious there for hours. He wasn't found until a long period of time. There was no assistant, there was no aid. He then found out that he had pneumonia, and then from pneumonia, it became tuberculosis. Because of tuberculosis, he spent a good amount of time in 2 tuberculosis sanitariums, and he was left literally handicapped for 26 months. And this devastated him because he had to pay the medical bills, which were a lot. And aside from being a tool maker on the side, Metesky was unemployed. He had no job. He had tuberculosis. He had bills, payments racking up, and he tried numerous times to get compensation from his former employer, Consolidated Edison. Um, However, he couldn't get any compensation. When he tried to apply for compensation, they denied it. Then when he went back and tried to apply for it, they said that it was too late and it wasn't within the time frame and that they weren't going to give him any compensation. And because he, after failing to convince his former employer that he contracted tuberculosis from his on-the-job incident, he resorted to making bombs. That was kind of sad for me, that this happened to him and that he didn't get any help, he didn't receive any aid, he didn't get any compensation, and that he had to live with this permanent medical condition for the rest of his life. But of course, making bombs is not the answer. Blowing people up and risking the lives of the people, that's not the answer. He could have done a multiple of things. He could have gone to a labor's union. He could have gotten a lawyer. He could have brung a lawsuit, something along that nature, well within the legal framework. Anyways, let me show you guys a picture of him. Bear with me here. This is the gentleman. It's kind of too bright. There you guys go. That's the gentleman. He is getting taken by the police officers there. As you guys can see, he's getting taken by the cops. This was when he was arrested. Let me see if I can pull up another bigger picture. There you go. This is him behind bars. There you guys go. Hopefully you guys can see that. I'm sorry about the lighting. There you guys go. That's better. That's better. Before it was just too much light. So that's our mad bomber. He served, like I said, he served until he served 16 years and 8 months of the 25 years, and then he was released in 1973, and then he lived another 21 years in freedom until his death at age 90. This is another picture of him. I'm loading another picture of him smiling. And this is his house. This was his house where he lived in Connecticut. This is a 3-story house. He lived on the first floor with his 2 sisters. I'm loading another image for you guys, but in the meantime, I want to tell you that even the psychiatrist, Dr. Brussels, he stated that he wrote a book called Case Book of a Crime Psychiatrist. It was published in 1968. Even on the book, he wrote that how much was it psychiatric work and how much was it sheer luck that he was able to hypothesize so accurately. And did he really help law enforcement agencies and police officers to find this guy? Or was it all done because of the hard work and dedication that the law enforcement agencies and police officers put in? In addition, he says that was his work did it even play any factor at all in catching this guy? Because with the description that he gave, it could have been, the police officers could have found a German man, a Polish man, or any other man from Central Europe. I personally think that Dr. Brussels, he knew what he was talking about because of his years of expertise and what he has seen over the years. And even he questioned himself. So that shows a man that is dedicated, that shows a man that is honest, and that shows a man that is willing to do what is right. However, I think that even if Dr. Brussels did not help the police officers, they would have still eventually found him. And I say this because the culprit, the perpetrator, George Metesky, he even wrote to the police officers, he wrote to the newspapers that he worked at Consolidated Edison and that the injury happened on September 5th of 1931 and that he's going to make them pay and that they have to pay for their dastardly deeds. So I think that they would have eventually found him regardless, even if they did not ask for the help of Dr. Brussels. Anyways, let me show you guys another picture. This is another picture of the guy right here. He's here smiling. Again, I'm sorry about the lighting, but there you go. I actually kind of feel bad for him, that he got tuberculosis and he was literally handicapped for 26 months and he had bills racking up. But like I said, there are other alternatives that he could have taken. And I will say that in his situation, Metesky, he desperately needed help. I think that had he received the help from his employer, that things would have not gone so downhill. He would have not changed his mindset to become a deranged criminal. But again, he did not receive the help. And I will also say that when Dr. Brussels gave the police officers this information, the police officer did go on some wild goose chases before they eventually found Metesky based on the information that was given again by their employer. So I think that's a big factor in what helped the detectives catch Metesky. It was their work and their effort. I want to also add that the thing about the psychiatrists is that, as I was reading the case earlier, that a lot of them can be biased, especially when you have trials of murder and criminals and whatnot, whatever trials you have. Oftentimes, these psychiatrists, these experts, they will sell their testimonies to the highest bidder. In addition, whoever has more money, they will testify in favor for that group. And I think that that is morally, ethically wrong. But unfortunately, the criminal justice system in America, money has a big factor. Money plays a big factor. Money, celebrity, status, wealth, race. These all play a big factor when it comes to the legal system and the case, the courts, and the whole process. I will also add that now, especially, the line of criminal profiling, it blends in with racial profiling. What I mean by that is, in our society today, and even in the past, oftentimes when you have experts that do these criminal profilings, or even the cops, they tend to also racially profile. It's not so much about criminal profiling, it's more about racial profiling. And I think that that is a big problem, big issue in this country. It is a big issue in this country. And I will also add that when it comes to these experts making their hypothesis, I think that it should be based on facts, it should be based on data, it should be based on information that is reliable. And even what the experts say, the experts themselves should be questioned about how did they get this information, where did they get this information, how did it come, and so on and so forth. That is the only way the judge and jury can decide who to trust. And I will also add that in America, unfortunately, whenever there is a criminal case, no matter how big, no matter how small, and this is just my personal opinion that I want to share with you guys, is that it's not about what that person is. It's not about what he is or what she is. It's not about, whether he or she is a mass murderer or a serial killer, a mass shooter, or somebody that, did this crime or that crime. They don't look at the crime. It's about who you are. They look at who you are. This person is who. He's African American. He comes from poverty, or she comes from poverty, or he's Muslim, or she's a minority group, or they'll look and say this guy or this girl is Caucasian, they're wealthy, they're rich. It's about who. And then, of course, it's money. How much money you have. Unfortunately, the more money that you have, the better lawyers you can buy, the better chances you have of not getting prosecuted. That's prosecuted to the fullest, I should say. And that is true. That is absolutely true. Especially if you are a celebrity, if you have money, you don't have much to worry about. But if you are a minority, if you come from a broken home, if you're poor, then the criminal justice system really is not in your favor. It never is. And then the line of whether you're innocent until proven guilty or guilty until proven innocent, we just have to look at the case of Brenton Butler from Murder on a Sunday Morning. That's a perfect example. This, I think, also ties in with my case. This was also criminal profiling. The white tourist couple that came down to Florida, Mr. Stephan's wife, Marianne Stephan, she gets shot, and then Mr. Stephan claims that it was a black man. And then you have 15-year-old Brenton Butler that was walking down that neighborhood getting a job application. He just happens to walk by, and when they made the call, the police officers find a black male, 15-year-old male, that fits the description of black. And so they go after him, and then you got Williams, Darnell, and Glover that use coercion, they use intimidation, they beat him, they psychologically break him down, even though he's innocent, even though they don't have anything against him. And unfortunately, that is what I mean by the line of criminal profiling and racial profiling. Sometimes there is no line. It's the same thing, especially now in this society. And if it wasn't for Patrick McGenius, the state attorney, who's a public defender, he wasn't a personal lawyer, he wasn't a private lawyer, he was a state attorney. He luckily him and his partner proved the innocence of Brenton Butler, or else he would have had an innocent 15-year-old black boy that would have served life in prison. But again, a lot of that had to do with who he was. It's not about what is who. Black 15-year-old male. And that is a big problem in America. And then I will end by saying that I will repeat myself and say that whenever they're making these cases of criminal profiling, they should use data, they should use reliable information, and the experts that come out with these data and this information, they should also be inspected and questioned. But that's it for my presentation. And the last thing I wanted to say is that it's the criminal justice system in America. There are a lot of flaws in it. Like I mentioned, money, race, the media. There are a lot of flaws in it, and these flaws should be addressed. They should change, because you have cases where they say, for example, the white drunk driver that killed 3 people, he was notably rich, and so the defense of the attorney was he had affluenza. He was too rich to know what was going on. Or whenever you have a mass shooter that's white, usually Caucasian, they play the defense that, oh, he had mental disabilities, he had mental issues. I do not agree with that. They are criminals and they should be charged the same. Because I have yet to hear a case where a black man shoots somebody, or a minority shoots somebody, or a group of people, and for that defense attorney to say, oh, he had affluenza or he has mental disability. No. Everybody should be held equal to the law. In the case of George Metesky, I want to say that he might had some issues because he was in the military, so he might have suffered from PTSD, and he came back here and he had another incident, and like I said, he didn't receive the help, and that's what took him down this road. I think that it's important to help people in situations like that, because that is a way that we can avoid these tragedies and bombings and shootings. We should help those people that genuinely need help, but not say that criminals who are just downright criminals, they need help, or they have affluenza, or they have a mental disability just because of their wealth and because of their social status or because of their race. I do not agree with that. Not at all. I never have. I never will. But thank you so much, guys, for listening to my presentation. I really enjoyed it. Overall, it was a great case, and everybody be safe, be healthy, and good luck with everything. All right? Take care, guys. Thank you.